Good afternoon. I'm Chris Scherer, Member Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers and the co-host of this month's episode of the SBE Web Extra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is a monthly SBE meeting, usually held on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals with about 5,000 members, most of them in the U.S., but also around the world. The SBE Web Extra is sponsored by Katrine. Katrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. The host of today's SBE Web Extra is SBE board member Kirk Harnack, who is also the chair of the SBE Social Networking Committee. Hello, Kirk.
Hello, Chris. Thanks for the great introduction, and we're going to be right back to you for our member update in just a minute. I'm Kirk Harnack, and delighted to be here along with our guest today, and our guest is the brand new elected president, elected by her peers, Andrea Cummis. Andrea, welcome in. Good to see you.
Nice to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Andrea, over the next hour or so, we're going to be checking in with you and finding out what some of your goals are for SBE for the coming couple of years for your term. And I also want to look at some of your accomplishments in your television engineering career. I think they're amazing. I got to talk to you last week about some of these, so many things I didn't know. And I think it's a good thing that we're going to be able to celebrate SBE's first female president. That's great. And then some of the other accomplishments that you've had over the years. So, Andrea, we're looking forward to talking to you. Bring you back in just a minute. First, we'll go back to Chris Scherer, though, for our SBE member update. Chris?
That's right. Thanks, Kirk. Here is your SBE member update for November 15, 2021. The SBE Board of Directors met virtually in October, and among the business discussed were two items I'll mention here real quick. The SBE National Frequency Coordination Committee developed suggested recommended standards and practices as a guide to all local SBE and SBE-affiliated local market frequency coordinators. The document, last updated in 2017, describes the processes and limitations of the role of the SBE frequency coordinator to maximize frequency allocations for broadcast auxiliary use. With an increased demand on BAS frequencies, including coordination with the Department of Defense, the Frequency Coordination Committee has been tasked with evaluating and revising the frequency coordination guidelines and roles of the local coordinators. The committee's findings will be reported to the SBE Executive Committee at its meeting in January. Also, the SBE operates under a set of bylaws that establish the governing rules of the organization. The bylaws are reviewed periodically to ensure that they are up to date and to propose and adopt any changes needed as the society, applicable laws and regulations governing nonprofit corporations, and technology evolve. At the October meeting, several sections of the SBE bylaws were considered for review. The proposals were prepared by the SBE Bylaws Committee, which at the time was chaired by Jed Kyler. 3 changes were proposed to the board. The changes address adding teleconferencing to the methods of holding board meetings, amending the signatures required when signing checks for society expenses, and increase the frequency of conducting a financial audit, and the process to amend the bylaws and extend the member notification window and method of any changes. The full text of these changes will be printed in the December issue of The Signal. There's one more live Webinars by SBE presentation this month on November 18th. It's Module 3 of the SIP series, Case Study, Installing and Operating a Broadcast Talk Show System in the Cloud. Watch it live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Sean Dolan and Mike Doris of Inrush Broadcast Services are the presenters. The SIP series continues in December with Module 4, EBU 3326 Guidelines and Requirements. It's on December 9th. Jacob Daniluk with Tieline presents. Also in December, there's a free webinar titled Staying Compliant, Lighting Considerations for Your Tower. It's on December 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Drake Lighting is making it free to everyone, and Jacob Young of Drake Lighting will present that one. For information on these and all the webinars by SBE, go to sbe.org/webinars. And I'll note that if you are SBE certified and when you apply to recertify, if you find you need a few more points, the free webinars by the SBE that the SBE offers are a great way to earn those extra couple of points. Speaking of certification, the next SBE certification exam window at local chapters is in February. The application deadline for that exam is January 3rd. If a local chapter exam is not convenient for you or not possible because of in-person restrictions, private proctoring is available. As you look ahead to the new year, add SBE certification to your list of goals. More information on SBE certification is online at sbe.org/certification. And I'll add a reminder that the October SBE Web Extra was a presentation of the SBE Membership Meeting and Awards Program. You can watch the replay of that on the SBE YouTube channel. But of course, wait until this one's over, right? And that's your SBE member update for November 15, 2021.
Thank you very much, Chris Shearer, for that member update, and all those web links should be in our show notes as well. So if you missed one, you can see it in the show notes as soon as we publish that on YouTube. All right. Well, I'm delighted that we're able to bring in our new SBE president. Andrea Cummis has been around the SBE for actually quite a while. I have here, look, these are all the things Andrea's been doing with SBE, including board member, served as treasurer for looks like about 5 terms, vice president for a couple of terms, and now elected by her peers, SBE president. Andrea, welcome into the show. Good to talk to you.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
I think
totally unprepared.
That's okay. And you're coming to us from a temporary work location in what? You're in a big city somewhere, aren't you?
I'm in DC.
Oh, okay. DC. Good deal. Hey, so we've announced that, and people should know who are SBE members, that you're the new SBE president. First female president. Do you have any feelings about that, or what kind of congratulations or comments have you received about that?
Yeah, I've actually heard from a ton of people I hadn't heard from in years. It was a pretty big deal. I had hoped we'd be able to celebrate in person in October. Of course, that didn't happen. So hopefully we can all be together in April in Las Vegas.
I mentioned that you've served in quite a few different ways with SBE since the early 2000s, since 2003. I'm going to guess that you've been an SBE member, though, even before your board term election back in 2003. How long have you been a member of the group?
Trying to remember. I think I joined when I lived in Los Angeles way back 100 years ago, I think. And then I know I was more active in the New York chapter when I moved there, late 90s, I guess, worked for USA and then Oxygen. Somewhere along the line, I met Fred Baumgartner, and he said, "Hey, why don't you run for the board?"
You know, you mentioned Fred Baumgartner. I think he's responsible for a lot of SBE memberships. He's certainly been inspiring to me. He pulled me aside and before I was, I guess I had let my membership lapse for a while, and he pulled me aside and said, "You need to be in this." And then yeah, he's great. He's responsible for a number of people. Andrea, I wonder if we could kind of bring people up to date on just where you've been. I mean, a lot of folks don't know about you. You are typically behind the scenes. You're on the non-lens side of the camera, typically. I think one of the first things that you did related to the fact of being a woman is something to do with a big 40-foot TV production truck. Tell me about that and your experiences early on with that.
I've actually been doing like video production since junior high, amazingly. And in high school, I ran a 4-camera TV studio for my whole time in high school and decided that's what I wanted to do. My goal had always been to work Olympics. I couldn't arrange that right out of college. But I got my electrical engineering degree from Carnegie Mellon and then got hired by Ampex and moved to Redwood City. And I was up in that area for a while, went down to LA in 84, worked the Olympics in 84. And then I met the guys from the Sun television truck in 84. And kept going from there. They hired me to be the junior engineer on the truck, and then I designed a truck for them and ended up taking over their truck. And it just kind of kept going. Ended up working 3 more Olympics, a couple of Goodwill games, worked freelance on a lot of trucks, and then ended up getting hired by USA Networks to move to New Jersey, where I grew up but never worked, and to run their broadcast center in Jersey City.
So is there something special about sports broadcasting that appeals to you? Because you've you've worked 4 Olympics, which is more than most Olympic athletes and more than some Olympic coaches have. You've worked some Goodwill Games in Seattle, St. Petersburg, Russia. You helped build a broadcast center for that. Moscow Peace Marathon. You and sports broadcasting seem to go hand in hand. What's the appeal for you?
It used to, yeah. I love doing live events. Just, bigger and crazier the better. Just a lot of fun and a great challenge. I don't like being bored.
Live events, you got very little wiggle room for error. Now, I've done a little bit of live television myself in front of the camera, done a little bit of meteorology, and there's always that heightened sense. Your brain's spinning at just full tilt. That this is it. This is the big time. You got to get it right. And is that part of the appeal for you? Is there a bit of is there a bit of adrenaline going when you're in charge of so many live events?
Sure, it's a big challenge. Always fun. Usually you're working with a great team.
You mentioned that you had a hand in designing a television production truck, and it kind of sounds like that was also reasonably early in your career. To design a truck, the layout, where things are going to go, panels and equipment and seating and so forth, it seems to me that you've got to have a really good understanding of the purpose and what really needs to get done, as well as the size, the shape of the equipment, how much room people need for, elbow room, what they're going to have to be doing. Do they have to turn around or not? What's their sight lines? I'm curious to understand, how you came to understand that fairly quickly. What clicked in your mind that led you to think, I can design this truck at least as well and maybe better than the ones I've been in?
I don't know that it was better. It was kind of a weird, different use truck, but I've helped build some other trucks. I've been in systems really the whole time. I'm saying in high school, I was figuring out how to do 4-camera shoots for our school plays. So I think it all kind of comes from that. I'm pretty good at seeing the systems and how things go together. And I've been doing this long enough to know how things should work, ask a lot of questions, and talk to the people who are going to be the users, hopefully figure out the right solutions.
Seems like you said earlier you went to Carnegie Mellon, and I'm a little curious as to the mix of what you learned in pursuit of your education at Carnegie Mellon that directly informed what you chose to do for a career, versus did you have lots of television experience at Carnegie Mellon, and did that experience inform you as well or better than what the classroom learning gave you?
Yeah, I think the classroom learning was all interesting, but had very little to do with what I was doing. I already knew what I was going to do for my career, assuming it would all work out. I did get to work in the radio station there, so that was fun. I found all sorts of side jobs doing video production and maintenance and different things all over Pittsburgh, some on campus, some I did a job at University of Pittsburgh. I worked for a production company in Pittsburgh. Any video experience I could get along the way I took. I guess I was lucky it all came together.
I wonder if you could think back into some of your live event broadcasting, either the Olympics, the Peace Marathon in Moscow, or the Goodwill Games, and relate to us a story. What was something that was where you really got to use, oh my gosh, I used everything I learned to make this happen, and nobody at home knew any better. It just looked good to them. What can you tell us about some experience at one of these live events?
Probably the Moscow one was the craziest, because I got picked up kind of at the last minute. I was at the Goodwill Games in Seattle, and a lot of the guys that worked with NEP were going to go right from the Goodwill Games to go to this Moscow shoot. And one of their head engineers at the last minute couldn't go, and they asked me to fill in. So I went over there, really had no idea what to expect. We were using the local OB trucks, and it was a pretty big deal. We had cameramen in the military helicopters flying over Moscow, and that had never happened before. Like, no one was allowed to fly over Moscow. So that was cool. And we just had to figure out how to make things work. I had never seen any signals other than NTSC, and they were not that. So, I finally managed to get a camera hooked up to a scope and had no idea what I was looking at. And I was trying to I was actually at, it was Lenin Stadium outside with an ENG camera that we needed to set up, and I had nothing. So we walked over to one of their trucks and asked if they had a chip chart, and no one really spoke English, so we're coming up with every word for chip chart you could think of. And there was this whole group of very nicely dressed people, all sort of in a circle, and we're trying to talk to them, and they're not really paying attention. We managed to get somebody to let us in the truck and let us hook up to their scope and take a look and see if we could white balance anything. And there was a woman engineer, and it turns out there's lots of women engineers in Russia, very different from the US. And she heard me talking to the camera guy and decided I knew what I was doing. So when we got back to the station we were working out of, she actually told all the men, give me whatever I asked for. It's kind of cool. So,
oh, you found an advocate. That's awesome.
yeah,
Oh,
crazy.
and actually you answered a question that I've had, and I'm glad you did, but you might expound on it a bit. When U.S. television production crews go overseas, are they using? I mean, we're not flying TV production trucks or transporting them overseas, are we? Are we renting things in other countries? How does that work?
Well, I think it depends. Like for the Olympics, then NBC shipped over literally on giant ships, trucks. When we did the Today Show in China in '87, they shipped over old trucks that were basically mothballed, and we had to make them work in China, with no Radio Shacks back then, even in China. So that was challenging. And then they moved them to Korea for the '88 Olympics, and then they stayed in Korea after that. So I think it's different. But for big things like Olympics, they usually bring in their trucks.
These, when you're doing sporting events like this, do different trucks tend to specialize in different portions of the broadcast, or is each truck pretty much carbon copy of the next, and they can all do everything?
I haven't done trucks in a while now, but it used to be some were specialized, built for football or something. But generally, years ago, there were just lots of trucks, and you use them. In fact, the one I worked on in the '80s, we did entertainment and sports. And nowadays, I think they're a lot more specialized, especially since you have 4K trucks and high end and the lower end.
Thinking about moving into today's world, you've got a couple of careers going on simultaneously here, right? So you're Chief Technology Officer over at WLVT in Bethlehem, PA?
39, right here. Yep.
And then I believe what you and your husband operate a consultancy firm that does what? Consulting, installation, that kind of thing?
Yeah. We do smaller projects, lots of AV stuff for schools, and then small TV studios, an occasional bigger production system or master control.
So the point I'm making here, and I've been trying to make, and it's not hard to with you, is that you have your hands dirty in this kind of work all the time. This is what you do, and so when you represent the rest of the SBE membership as our new elected president of SBE, you're right in there with us. You know what we're doing, and you've even got plenty of radio experience too, even at your current location.
Yeah, we have a radio station we started 1 year, 2 years ago. They're all blending together. And And I've actually done some other, built some radio systems along the way. I did the XM system at Fox a long time ago and some other things. What's funny, and I always said to Fred, like, I think I'm in the wrong group because my expertise is not at all on the RF transmission side. So that's where I was looking to Ted, my VP, to help me if I have questions. But he's awesome. So I felt like I had good backup.
That brings us up to recent history, and of course, everybody's been affected by the COVID pandemic and our response to it. Talk to me a bit about some of your experiences here in either. Of course, you couldn't get ready for COVID. We didn't know it was coming. But in hindsight, what sort of engineering workflow changes did you make that worked well into COVID, or what did you have to make once COVID was here? Talk to me about how things were looking for you, let's say early last year, early in 2020.
Well, we got very lucky at WLVT because we had just started to implement moving everybody to Microsoft 365. And the official implementation day, I think, was the Monday that everything shut down. So our timing couldn't have been better, total coincidence, but it worked great. So we were sort of prepared for everyone to work remotely, office-wise. And then technology-wise, we had brought in a live stream switcher, similar to vMix or TriCaster, to do our uplink and small shoots. So that happened to have some really good remote call-in guest kind of software built in. And we were able to use that to our TD director would actually team viewer into it, and he could send out a link to the audio person to be able to do the audio, and the graphics person to remotely do the graphics, and then we could send out links to guests. And we were pretty quickly doing remote shoots, and we did live COVID update shows every day. So we used it a lot, and then as soon as the TriCaster TC2 Elite became available, we bought one of those and started using that. Now we're mostly back to doing production in the studio. For a year we were doing it this crazy remote way.
I'm curious to know in all the changes that you had to make, and you said you got Livestream, which is a software based production platform, live production platform. Are there things that you learned during COVID that seem like a good idea to carry through, even if and when we get to a very post-COVID world and most of us are back together? Are there techniques or software packages or things that you're going to continue to use, even if you maybe didn't have to? They just seem like a good way to go nowadays.
Yeah, and I think the ability to have remote guests is huge, because you can have guests anywhere in the world that are maybe way better than what you'd get wherever you're located. And you don't have to pay to bring them in. So I think for a small station, that's huge, because you could potentially get some big name guests for shows that you would never be able to get in your studio.
That sounds like a smart way to do, because you do want to bring people in, and we've seen so much of that. Even if the anchors and weather people and sports people are back in the studio, and producers as well, story reporters and such. I was looking at my notes here, and I remembered last week you said that when everybody had to exit the building and couldn't come into work, and you put this live stream switcher to use. It turns out you actually already had this live stream switcher. You had just put it into use in a different part of the TV station. Tell me about that and about moving its purpose.
Right. Well, we had a small uplink room that we use all the time. Charlie Dent comes to our studio a lot to work for CNN and Fox and NBC send us different guests, being in the Lehigh Valley. So it's a very busy room, and I had bought this small live stream switcher just to handle that room, and it was doing great, and we were using it all the time when COVID happened, I said, gee, I think I saw something about being able to sit remotely to do training for people before. Let's see what it can do. And it had all this great ability that we weren't using because it wasn't our intention. And it allowed us to pretty quickly get into remote broadcast.
So that live stream system is intended for live production. I'm thinking that you guys have an Avid system as well, for pre-producing shots and packages and even commercials. How were you able to deal with using the Avid system, which was probably pretty much in place in the TV station? What did you do for that?
Well, we use Avid strictly for post. We have a pretty big Avid system. We have like 5 dedicated rooms, plus a whole bunch of floating licenses for laptops. And we worked with T2 they have a system whose name I totally forget that connects to Avid and lets the editors work from home to be able to log directly into their machine. Sort of a bad team viewer or a much better team viewer system. And that way they can access all the local files and everything. So that worked really well, actually.
So that didn't require necessarily high bandwidth between remote workers and local. They were just remoting into something. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Well, let's, if you don't mind, let's turn our attention to SBE. Congratulations on being elected by your peers as SBE president. So what, kind of give us a little update. Where do you think we stand, and what would you like to do during your term?
Well, we've done some amazing things over the many years I've been there. I take very little credit. We have a great team. The staff's always been good. And the board's been great. We've had an amazing group of presidents, and Wayne, our previous president, did a great job too. We just launched our new website, which is so much better. And I think I was involved in when we launched the one before that, and probably the first one. So we've come a really long way on the web. Obviously, a very important place to be. I think things like this webcast are really important. The webinars that we've been doing get better and better. I know we're in the middle of the SIP series. For me, the biggest thing I've done in the past was when I got on the board, I was assigned the publication committee, which I felt like the one woman was getting the committee that nobody knew what to do with. But working with John Pore, we actually ended up doing quite a lot of decent books. And then we did the Big Engineering Handbook, which was the most successful publication that SBE has done. So I was really proud of that one. I would love to see us keep doing things like that, but I think the electronic side is going to be more important going forward. So, the certifications, obviously, that's our big thing. We got to keep going with that. The ATSC3 one, I think, is the right direction. I'm sure we'll come up with more new technology type certifications. They take long to decide we're doing them, do the research, put them together. Not an overnight quick thing. Obviously, diversity is a big thing for me. That's not new for us. We've been trying to figure that out, as have lots of other places. So how do you get more people to join, different people, different ages, people who aren't exactly broadcast engineers, because there's less and less of us. We become more and more of an IT kind of job. So how do we get more IT sort of people interested in our group? None of this is new. We've been trying to figure this out for years. So I think that'll be an ongoing debate for all of us.
I was just, you mentioned IT, and yeah, that is where so much of this goes, but with knowledge of, and maybe even an emphasis in media creation, media production. I remember, back in, and it seems like a small slice of the general population. At the high school that I went to, I was the AV kid. I was the guy that went to every room and set the projector up because nobody else could. I was the guy, who broke out the whatever videotape machine they had at the time back in 1978, and made that work. It seems like we ought to be able to find people who are interested in both IT and media creation. I wonder, Andrea, we didn't really talk about this beforehand, but I wonder if any of the STEM or STEAM programs that go on in middle schools, high schools, if any of those would be an avenue for SBE to look into, to try to coordinate with, to see if we can, interest people in, hey, you're interested in robotics, maybe you'd be interested in putting a camera on that robot, and hey, we already have that in TV stations, don't we? Cameras that are on robots. That might be one avenue. Like to hear your thoughts on that, as well as the SBE Mentor Program. I was just in a meeting last week about that, and it seems like it's going strong, and we're having some success with the Mentor Program. What do you think?
Yeah, I think those are both really important things. The Mentor Program's fantastic. I've always been interested in the school programs and the school chapters. Back when we had Keith doing it, I thought he was kind of on the right track, and then I don't know what happened with that after he left, just sort of fell apart. But one of my customers is actually Passaic County Technical Institute, and they have a fantastic TV program. And, most of those people aren't going to go into the technical side, certainly not engineering, but maybe a couple will. And that's the sort of place we should be. And there's schools like that all over the country. So I think especially the technical high schools and the college programs, we've got to be there.
Chris Shearer is with us. And Chris, I wonder if you might have a question or two for Andrea. And I wonder if you might also have any perspective from the SBE office's point of view on having Andrea as our new SBE president.
Well, sure. And having sat in that chair a couple of years, I know what you're in for, at least to a point, Andy. So I certainly wish you some luck in that regard. We touched on the Mentor Program, and related to that, a newer program with the SBE is the Technical Professional Training Program. I'm curious, do you have any advice, Andy, for the younger people who are getting into broadcast and media technology engineering? Way to kickstart their careers, other than the obvious Mentor Program or our own SBE technical professional training. Any other advice you would offer to someone new coming into the industry?
If you can get internship, I think that's a great way to start. It's actually one of the things I did when I was in college. I had an internship at WNET in New York. My daughter did an internship with the station I'm at in the production side, and she graduated not with any technical degrees, 2 bachelors of arts from NJIT, which she thinks is very funny that she went to the technical school and got the arts degrees. But I've been trying to convince her that she could do engineering, broadcast engineering, since she was much younger. But she doesn't want to listen yet. But I think a production company is offering her a job this week, so that's pretty exciting. But kids like that just have a lot of common sense and see how things go together and understand how to solve problems. That's who we need to find and help. And the jobs are certainly out there. So it's just getting the right people sort of teed up and be able to help them.
Andrea, it seems to me that with having you in particular as the elected president of the SBE, that it's a great opportunity for SBE to increase its outreach to females in college and high school. You can be the face of this for those people, and cause people to think, that may be something I could do. It may be something I should think about. It's just one more way of attracting people who might normally not think of a broadcasting career. So I'm, as chairman of the social networking committee, I would certainly love to feature you and see if we can generate some interest in SBE among girls and women who would be looking for a technical career. Would you be interested in that?
Oh, that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, anything I can do to help would be great.
All right, I see some social media posts in our future, certainly. Chris,
That'd be fun.
I'm kind of out of questions for Andrea. Did you have anything you'd like to follow up with?
Well, I mean, we've talked about some of Andy's experience and a little bit about some of her goals. I mean, kind of tying the two, and you mentioned diversity already, Andy. Is there anything else from your experience that your career experience that you want to bring into your term or terms as president that you're looking forward to expanding on or enhancing in some way, again, based on your career path as it's come so far?
I just try to think out of the box, really, and not necessarily look at where we've been and how we did things in the past, but how we would like to do them in the future. And it's an interesting time where, we have a new executive director. We're going to hopefully have a new general counsel next year. And everything's going to be different just because we have those different people who are so important to the group. So I am trying to look at that as a very positive thing and see how we can improve on what we do. One of the things that we were kind of forced to do, but we had talked about it for a long time for the board, was being able to do remote meetings so that everyone didn't have to be in person at every meeting, and they wouldn't get, I forget the process, written up and then toss it off the board because they couldn't be there. So I think that if they don't have to be there every time, that allows us to attract different people whose companies won't pay for them to come to board meetings. We've discussed this on the board for many years, and now we've been able to make that change just because we couldn't all be together. So sometimes it's good to be forced to do things, but it has been a chance and will continue to be with these crazy times we're living in to look at can do things different and better and just keep kind of moving into the future and not be too stuck in the past.
Sure. Do you want to make any mention of your fellow team members, other officers and or board members serving with you at least for this year and going forward?
Sure. We get those names up because I'm terrible at remembering them. Let's see. Well, Ted, of course, as VP, who I really appreciated him being willing to work with me. He and I have been on the board together for many, many years, and he's just a great guy to work with. Kevin is secretary, and Jason as treasurer. They're both awesome, and it's nice to see some younger guys getting involved, and they're from all over the country. So I just can't say enough that people are being willing to step up and really be involved at an officer level. For the elected folks, we got Zulita, did I say that right? Out of Honolulu,
Julieta.
Which is Julieta. I get that wrong every time. I'm sorry, Julieta.
We're actually going to we're showing on screen the people who just started in a new term. The
there we
six
go.
Oh, good.
directors
The one I was
started a new
reading.
term.
Thank you.
So
for helping me out. And Jeff and Chad being back is great. And Gary, of course, and David and Dan, terrific group. And I was excited to get another woman on the board. So that was big for me. And then we have
David and Julieta are starting brand new directors to the board. So they're both brand new. The other four were incumbents that were reelected. And then we have six more that we can throw real quick. Those who are now in the middle of their terms, with a year to go in the 2-year term. They're up on the screen, including that guy with the hair. What's his name? Oh, yeah. Kirk.
So I asked Kurt and Roz to be on the executive committee. They were both nice enough to agree. So that's fantastic. And we have Fred and Shane and Tom and Steve. And it's just a great group. I'm really excited about working with everybody.
Yep. I think you have a good team too. It's always good to have interested people and not only experience in the industry, but the willingness to serve and to step forward and fill the need to continue the progress that the society has launched and carries on. So, any other committee reports or committee activities that you're purposely looking forward to to expand upon? You mentioned publications, at least on the electronic side, particularly. I know we actually have an update to Cert Preview, the certification sample test software that's in the works. We recently launched the ATSC3 specialist certification. So those are a couple of things that are already sort of in progress that will likely come to fruition during your term. Any other ideas on some of the various committees that you're looking forward to working with?
Nothing off the top of my head. Years ago, I had this crazy idea about doing some sort of app that would have like the local chapter information if you were traveling, maybe some Cert Preview questions just to get you interested. Oh no, maybe I'll bring that up again. I think I got shot down pretty badly on that years ago. But maybe I'll try.
Well,
again.
Of course, years ago that was way ahead of its time. Now we're in a situation where apps are just commonplace. And actually, I'll go ahead and throw this out there. When the website was redesigned, and it actually launched about a year ago, almost to the day here, the idea of launching an SPE app was included in that. We decided to get the website done first, and then we'd come back to the app idea to see if there was something additional we could include in an app. So the idea is certainly out there, and it could be further developed a little bit more. And so certainly that's something we can, by all means, talk about.
One of the things that I like that we've done with the new SPE website is it's pretty mobile responsive. So it may, if enough functionality was added to the website, and I'm thinking of some ideas that we had in the past terms, was a way for engineers to keep track of their recertification points. Have their own, their own area that did that. But I really like the fact that the website is mobile responsive, looks good on your phone, and we just add some more functionality to it, and maybe we wouldn't need an app, but it's all things we can talk about. Andrea, I want to thank you for asking me and Roz to serve on the executive committee. I can't wait for us all to get together in Aruba. That's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to
it. I'm totally in favor of that.
Except it's not Aruba. Aruba, I think, is spelled Orlando or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good deal.
It would just be nice to get together anywhere, really. And nice to see people lately.
Andy, thank you for spending this time with us. I certainly do appreciate it. And again, congratulations. We'll be looking forward to, is it a 2-year term or what?
1 year.
It's a 1 year, but she can serve up to 2.
Okay. Good deal. Well, that'll be a shoo-in. No point in running against you in a year. Oh, good. Chris, I think we're about done unless Andrea has any last
I was going to say that's pretty much what I had. I don't know if Andy has any closing thoughts or anything else she wants to touch on that we haven't asked her about. So,
no thoughts. But I really appreciate you guys giving me the time to talk to everybody, and just want to leave an open door. If any members have any questions ever, just get in touch with me.
All right.
Great.
And I'm sure the SB president has an email address. Chris, do you know what that
sure
is?
I do.
Cleverly, president@spe.org.
There you go.
Try to make it really
just
simple.
president@spe.org. So fellow members, if you want to send Andrea a word of congratulations or a question or a comment or even a complaint, president@spe.org. All right, Chris, I think we're going to turn it over to you to close us out.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Kirk, and thanks, everybody. This has been the SPE Web Extra, the SPE chapter of the web. We present this monthly, and we hope you'll join us each time. We'll post the replay on our YouTube channel in about a day. The SPE Web Extra is sponsored by Katrine, whom we thank for the support. Katrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. If you hold SPE certification, viewing the SPE Web Extra qualifies you for 1/2 point in category G, that's attendance. It's just like attending a local chapter meeting. And that's it for this installment of the SBE Web Extra from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. Thanks again to our guest, SBE President Andrea Cummis, and on behalf of Kirk Harnack, we'll see you next month.